had this life-changing experience where I went to bed. That time is actually a spherical model. There really is no past. There really is no future. The human actually accesses everything in this present moment. And everything in the present moment is really the only thing that's real.
By chance, do you have any Native American blood in you?
I began to see certain patterns of human behavior, and I questioned, where do those patterns of behavior come from? It seems like we're abiding by some sort of construct. And in these contactee experiences, as in my experience, mine was super physical. Everything is operating in harmony. And there is a balance and an innate self-organizing mechanism to this planet. So in reality, there's nothing that's really out of balance, only part of this planet Earth. We share and we are deeply interconnected with other planetary systems that we participated in seeding.
It's so hard to come back, and sometimes 10 minutes have gone. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to come back. So how can we, is it a matter of quieting the mind or basically focusing on something? What are some of the tips you can give us to help improve the meditations? Because I do agree meditation is super powerful. If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246, and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because we have some more great content coming soon. Hello and welcome back to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am your host Todd Cave, and today I've got an awesome guest for you. Her name is Geraldine Orozco, and she is an epigenetic psychotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, Gong Instructor, medical Pranic Healer, intuitive Life Force Cultivation Master, certified N.L.P practitioner, and is a mindfulness-based stress reduction therapist. Geraldine has over 17 years of experience in energy cultivation arts with certifications of Advanced Medical Pranic Healing at the Institute for Inner Studies. She is also the founder of Bay Area Meditation in San Francisco, which offers meditations and Qigong programs for corporate and private studies in the Bay Area. Geraldine is now dedicated to the dissemination of knowledge of biophysical energy architecture, multidimensional genetics, and the morphogenetic fields, connection to our use and management of the life force in our spiritual journey, everyday life, and beyond the physical.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster and then learn how to control it.
You gotta be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix, because there's so many levels and layers to it, Geraldine, it is an absolute honor to have you on the Conscious Man 7. I have heard you speak before on our mutual friend Jahan's podcast, and then I heard you on a random YouTube video of maybe 6 weeks ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to this lady, because she talks about a lot of stuff that I know about, but I'm not necessarily a real expert in. So I wanted to get you to come on and have a chat and enlighten my my followers on some of these things that are not of this world and stuff like that. So welcome again, Geraldine, and I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, Todd, and to meet you and your community. Thank you.
Okay, so awesome. So before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you actually get into all this kind of work?
Yeah, so my journey is kind of like kind of a lifelong story. I was a contactee. In other words, I've had experiences with interdimensional consciousness or beings since I was a very little girl. And always, extremely intuitive and very quiet throughout my upbringing. I was born into a very spiritual family. And I was raised meditating. So we were, my parents meditate all the time, and they were very much into deep spiritual exploration as well. But they always allowed for free will. And so we kind of did our own little research and followed our own path. But, what really led me into this work is actually meditation. In fact, meditation in a way kind of saved my life because I've had several really impactful experiences in life that have always brought me and redirected me back to this practice of the self, coming back to that meditation, going back internally. And really, the proof of this life is that, I can never get my real deep questions answered externally. Those questions seem to always somehow be answered internally. And in 2013, I began to leave my work for a little bit. I took 4 months off my work. I had a high-end event planning company alongside with Bay Area Meditation, and in this meditation, I would kind of do up to 9 hours a day for 4 months, and I began to kind of deconstruct every belief system that ever existed in me, to the point where I began to kind of revisit like core belief systems and where they came from. And I discovered something called what I now call DNA reprogramming, which is essentially following our emotional and core belief systems into the root where we begin to deprogram them. And what happens is that as I started to do this work deeper and deeper every day, I began to notice that my perspective through the healing work that I was doing became broader and broader, and the questions became more expansive and more collective, I guess you can say. And I went all the way back to looking at my ancestral lineage, going all the way back to my roots, of my ancestors, and I began to see certain patterns of human behavior, and I questioned, where do those patterns of behavior come from? It seems like we're abiding by some sort of construct, and we are somehow engineered in some way to exist in the way that we do. And this is where things started to open up. And in October of 2013, I had this life-changing experience where I went to bed after meditating up until 12 p.m. and 12 p.m., right? Yeah. Or is that a.m.? Yeah, a.m.
In the morning, yeah.
No, sorry, 12 p.m.
Okay.
And what happened is that at 3:33 exactly in the morning, a white light entered into the room and, covered every single wall of the room. And I looked at my phone. It said 3:33. I thought someone was trying to break in or there was some weird activity going on in the neighborhood. I walked to the window. I pulled down the blinds. Mind you, the blinds are closed. And I look through and this light is just completely engulfing and my body paralyzes. I cannot move, but I feel myself being brought and drawn through the wall to the other side. And then I end up on top of my garage, right outside my window, in front of the light, from which 6 lines emerged from the light that then formed these incredible gray beings about 7 foot tall. And, I was terrified. I was horrified. I never was into sci-fi before all of this. And although I had experiences as a child, they were never as vivid as this experience in this moment. So from there began being taken on board that craft, essentially, by these beings. And I was shown a series of information. And as I'm entering into this craft, this like a plasma, this incredible plasma, and it's a conscious technology that as I step in, it like knows I'm there, and I'm knowing it's there, interacting with it, and it is a lenticular kind of shape of the craft. We go to the left. And as I'm being brought inside, they use a lot of holographic technology inside of this space. And I'm being directed through the hologram into a room. And as I turn around, I see my aunt in her sleeping gown being guided by two of these tall grays directly in front of me. And I call out and I try to get their attention. Nothing comes out. They remove the hologram and they begin to show me this beautiful holographic blue prism with 8 layers that has all kinds of information that they had prepared for me. The first being this kind of alien language, the most incredibly beautiful, complex alien language. And it was a telepathic written language that when you stop trying to figure out what the symbols are saying, you begin to get images in your mind. And these concepts are massive. It's like universal concepts in every single word, every dot. And that's kind of how how I guess they communicate. And they take that out. And then I was taken to the Pleiades, to the planet Maya. And as a child, I used to pray to this constellation like every day. And I don't know why, but I had this incredible like affinity connection, longing, feeling to this constellation. But I was taken to the planet Maya and I was shown 2 separate timelines of myself as these Pleiadian elders in different timelines and what I was doing there. And that didn't make sense to me yet until many years later. But the next thing that they showed me was these little children, and these children I saw myself in the children. I saw the same look in the eyes, the same body language. I absolutely recognized myself in such an unbelievable way as a father or a mother does their child. And they were a product of me. These children were my children. That was what they were trying to introduce me to. And they were a combination of these gray, incredible, intelligent beings, and also a bit of, there was one that was more of a reptilian. And in that moment, just the connection with them brought back all of the memories that I had actually completely forgotten of actually being with them, giving birth, holding them, memories that I had not, and I remembered. And I began to feel emotional, thinking, I'm going to leave these children. I'm ready to let go of my earth life and come and take care of them. But they removed them and they began to show me the matrix, this holographic construct down to the cellular level. And they showed me how it functioned. And I began to understand how every single thing in this universe is so deeply interconnected. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt this profound peace, like a peace that I had never known before. And that to me was like the deep integrative feeling that allowed me to make peace with this experience and in a way understand that, we are living multiple realities, perhaps in this terrestrial plane. So this completely changed my life. And why is because the next day after I recovered, I shared with my parents what happened because I didn't know who else to talk to. And my parents were like, oh yeah, we've had experiences like that. We've had contact and we've seen so many UFOs. And I was like, how is it possible that you've never even talked about these things? How is it something normal to you? Because I'm having a breakdown over here, and they had already known. And when I went to my office the next day to work with my client, I didn't see a client. I saw a giant ball of light and colors and energy. And I could see everything that she was moving energetically through her body and feeling and thinking. And it just, the veil was ripped wide open. And it was so intense that for 3 months, I couldn't leave my house. I couldn't even go to the grocery store because I could literally hear the conversation of the person 3 houses down from mine. It would hurt because of the sensitivity to be around crowds of people. So to me, that was my greatest proof about what happened. And it completely changed my perspective into understanding that the human race is interconnected to something much greater than what we believe, essentially. So that's how I got started. I guess as a result of that is when I went really deep into my studies and my practices. And in 2017, I got a hypnotherapy. And this hypnotherapy opened up everything. I began to download in the hypnotherapy. My question was, what is the hybridization program? What does it mean to have these interdimensional children? What is our role and what is the soul? Those were my questions. And what I began to see as I was taken on a map of the world in the historic timeline from the origin of man. And I saw that three main bloodlines seeded our human race. And essentially, these three main bloodlines have evolved into all of the human races, in addition to our cousins and our interdimensional bloodlines from which we emerge from. And I began to see how those bloodlines were either preserved in terms of information through human history, how they are used for hybridization programs, not just our own terrestrial hybridization program, which is essentially the sustainability of this matrix, but also interdimensionally. We are seeding life continuously as creators in many dimensional planes. And so I went into the intricacies of that. And for many years, that completely, redirected my career, essentially.
Wow, what a story. I heard you said that before, and hearing it again, like, it's just even more amazing. Like, so, okay, I've got quite a lot of questions. So let me just catch myself here. So first thing first, you said that your family have had contact and stuff like that. So by chance, do you have like any Native American blood in you?
Yeah, well, my family is Bolivian and Italian, Sicilian bloodline, Basque bloodline, and from South America, Bolivia. So we have, I guess the Aymaras, Incas, all of those indigenous groups from South America. And Bolivia is a major hotspot for contact. I mean, we have the entire Tiwanaku next to Lake Titicaca. All of that were, just ancient civilizations that were deeply connected to Orion and Venus, civilizations. So is it in my DNA? Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because for one, the Basque are what I would say are the most unknown group of people we have on Earth at the moment, because even their language, when you will research it, it says no known history. They have the highest collection of Rh negative people. I think it's 36% of all the population. They seem to be the strongest people on Earth. And they have some like games that they play that is all about strength. And they seem to be what we call the descendants of the prehistoric native Europeans, right? Mm-hmm. So this is why I had asked if, because the Native Americans, they talk about they were seeded here and they come from the Pleiades and Orion and other star systems. So when you said that, I was thinking, but okay, judging from your last name, there has to be some sort of native in there, and maybe this came out like maybe from a past life or something like that, where you just had this memory. Because I have seen UFOs before twice, but never actually had contact. I have done several ayahuasca sessions. I've done more psychedelics you can think of. Never had that. Mostly I had my higher self talk to me, but to actually have contact. So, okay, question then. Have you ever done like ayahuasca or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Now, the reason I was going to ask is that when you go into the altered state, you have like full-blown conversations, but in your mind. So, for example, like ayahuasca, I did ayahuasca the weekend before, and it is super visionary. So you are there, but everything is in your mind, and it is almost like you are having different eyes, because ayahuasca works with the sixth chakra, which is your third eye. So this is why it's super visionary. So it is like, but when you're lying down, your eyes are closed. It's almost like you're awake, but with your eyes closed. So it is so real. And for me, in my situation, I just call it the voice. The voice comes in and talks to me, and the voice is my voice. And in several occasions, the voice has said to me, I am you, but I am at another level. And so this is why I asked the question if you had psychedelics, because it is almost like a full psychedelic experience. But I'm wondering if you were physically still in your bed, or when you woke up, you thought that you were awake, but you may have been still sleeping. Because this is why I asked about psychedelics and stuff, because it sounds like a psychedelic experience.
Yes, I know. I get that a lot. Psychedelics are using the chemicals, right? They are infusing chemicals in the body. And what happens is that it changes our brainwave states. So we need to understand what the body is and how the multidimensional body is structured. If you can understand your body as, hundreds of spheres that are actually making up your body, 1 to 2% of those are the spheres that make up this physical matter. And the rest of the spheres are what interconnect us to other dimensions. And that's infinite. That potential to access dimensions is infinite through the body. Our DNA essentially is like a portal, really, based on the DNA that we are made up, that we inherit, based on, as a soul, how you incarnate into the physical body and you attach to an ancestral lineage and a history of information, which is recorded with the Akashic records, which is the DNA of the planet, essentially. All of that is organized in this beautiful matter inside of the physical body. And through that information internally, it serves as a portal to access the different dimensional planes of what we are, which is all and nothing simultaneously. But essentially, the human, when we have these chemicals that jump us out into these dimensional planes, we are basically, moving up. It's almost like we're jumping from one dimensional state into another. We enter literally into a portal, into a field, and every single chemical, like marijuana or DMT or ayahuasca, they all have like very specific crystal structure, architectural structure at an atomic level, which will define the dimension that the human can access through those compositions, compounds. So essentially, it's a very specific realm that you visit. It's a specific dimension that is open to you, that is available to you through these medicinal healing plants. But we can also access those and others naturally by biohacking our own chemistry and our own body. And essentially, that's what the shamans trained for a very long time, their entire life, really, to learn how to utilize ayahuasca to enter and walk in these dimensions, dream walk, as they call it, in lucid states of consciousness, which are first exercised in the waking state. And the whole point of exercising them in the waking state is that we are activating our intuitive faculty, which is, of course, the intuition. But really, there's 3 main centers to the energies bodies. And the integration of the lower 3 chakras are essentially opening the heart, the throat, the third eye, which is the intuitive system. The heart is the one that links you with other organisms in a coherent state. And your third eye being the vision, that vision that you were just talking about. But once we begin to activate these, we begin, as much as we learn how to alchemize and integrate the lower 3 chakras, the human can begin to operate at a higher vibrational frequency, which means that their vortex, because we're made out of a vortex body, spins faster. Okay, and so that faster rate allows you to access higher dimensional planes through your body, and we access them through dream state. Normally we're accessing through dream state. what happens in contactee experiences like this is that, and mind you, I host an international support group, and part of the work that I do is research now, which is why I became an epigenetic psychotherapist, which is why I became a clinical hypnotherapist, was because I needed to understand what consciousness was, or even try to understand what consciousness is, and try to understand how do humans experience these kinds of interdimensional experiences that actually are leaving physical changes. So it is partly in a dream state, but also there is an overlap that is occurring, and it is expressed in the physical as well, which is what happens to a lot of contactees. They have these interdimensional experiences, which are usually mostly experienced in dream state, but we also need to define what that is, because we don't really know what dream state is. We think dream state is like, you're knocked out and you're just making stuff up, you're imagining things, or your current life is just venting itself in your dream, your dream state. It's a psychological construct, but it's actually more than that. Every time that we fall asleep and the brain waves begin to change, how you are spinning in your vortex and in combination to your brain states will define how high you can travel in and out of your body in these higher dimensional planes through the chakra bodies, because the chakras are the vortexes that allow us to enter into those dimensions. So it's kind of like a puzzle piece or a key, right? We're kind of just moving things, and as we align through frequency, the body is experiencing things. And in these contactee experiences, as in my experience, mine was super physical. I mean, I came back with, burn marks here underneath my eyes. My feet were dirty. My entire body, as I was moving through the wall, felt like I was being torn apart. And I literally felt and knew that I was that molecules of my body, molecules of the wall and the window, like that awareness was present in me as it was happening. And it activated these psychic abilities, which I didn't have Thursday before this event happened. So it was, what happens is that the physical body, because a very small part of our body is physical. As I mentioned, 1% to 2% of your actual body is physical. The rest is
small.
Yeah.
That's small. Wow.
Yeah. The rest is actually interdimensional if you think about it.
Okay.
And our DNA functions in the same way. Okay. Our DNA, only 1% to 2% is the protein that creates this physical vessel. The rest of the DNA is looked at as junk DNA. But what we are understanding now through the morphogenetic field is that we are a bioelectrical system that is actually responding and creating itself as a result of an instruction manual that we exist within. And that instruction manual is interconnecting us with all organisms, in this universe, really, or the multiverse, perhaps, if we understand what those constructs are.
Okay, so that's super interesting. So, okay, when you said the vortexes, so would this be akin to the Merkaba that's inside of us? Because the way I understood the Merkaba is that it's basically, for the people that don't want a good picture, be the Star of David, two triangles upside down. And the way I found it is that they spin in opposite directions. And St. Germain says basically that the faster you spin these, the faster you speed up your DNA and the atoms in your DNA. And in his book, there is a trilogy series. So people that want to understand a little bit about this topic, I would suggest you read the Unveiled Mysteries, the Magic Presence, and the I Am Discourse by St. Germain. He talks about you spinning up your DNA to become illuminated, basically to become an ascended master. And in the last book, the I Am Discourse, for memory term was Lady Nada, she ascended and became a master. And he has like a machine that he puts them in that literally does this speeding up. So then each chakra has a vortex or a Merkaba in each chakra, or is it you have a central Merkaba that controls all the vortices?
Yeah. So I think the Merkaba is a product of how energy moves through the body, which is a toroidal field. And if you map out the movement of a toroidal field, it creates those, two triangles. Yes. But what creates the toroidal movement is the collective movement of all of the vortices that you are made up of. Okay. And so we're made up of millions of vortices at the cellular level, because every cell is vortex makes the toroidal fields. Okay, so toroidal fields are made up of vortices. Okay, so every single molecule has this magnetic field around it, the toroidal field, and the collection of all of those cells creates this network of information that is this holographic projection of the physical body. And so that is in a fractal form, a cellular level, the way the body moves, and then the greater everything else. We see this pattern in nature. It's the Fibonacci sequence that helps us understand how energy pathways are running through, how life force basically self-organizes itself. And we have the main chakra centers that kind of interconnect all of these little micro vortex fields are the 7 main chakras in the physical body. There are many other main chakras that we still have yet to understand, and we are going to be learning those more as humanity is prepared for that. But right now we are mastering these first 7. And those first 7 are essentially what are, depending on how we are holding them, where our focus and attention is, we move the way these vortices are anchoring and moving life force in the body to create different geometric shapes in the body. Okay, so the Merkaba is kind of like step 1 of like really advanced forms that the human is capable of accessing through the way that they learn how to harness their life force. And so right now, our humanity is very kind of nascent and learning how to utilize this technology of the physical body. But the higher the dimensional planes we navigate during dream state, the more complex and higher platonic solid kind of format of geometry that the body has the capacity of holding. Okay, because we'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, the Merkaba itself is created by this toroidal field. So when the body is, let's say it's externalizing its attention to the physical realm, this Merkaba it's not really moving. It's actually more like this. Okay, so all of the lower chakras are wide open, super overactive, and the body is moving in a centrifugal manner. Centrifugal is the depletion of that life force, actually. So to create the Merkaba, we have to balance out and essentially redirect from the lower energies, the root, sacrum, solar, to the upper, right? To activate the heart, throat, and third eye, which is the activation of the higher faculties. That process, that embodiment is the creation of the Merkaba. The Merkaba is a result of that.
So basically, it's the balancing of the upper chakras with the lower chakras that creates, it makes sense, because the lower would be just depletion, and when you recycle that back in, that causes the Merkaba to activate because you're recycling it. Very interesting. Right. And the faster you spin your Merkaba, basically you can actually come in and out of this physical plane because the body is really a vehicle.
Exactly, it's a vehicle. It's literally a UFO, which some people see UFOs like lights, and sometimes they capture the Merkaba shape, or sometimes they capture those geometric shapes in those orbs and things like that. Those are literally light bodies that are moving, and we have that. Which
is what I tell all my listeners, that one of the key things to improving in your consciousness and having higher levels of spirituality and stuff is to get the body in shape, because you get the body moving, which is the beginning stage. And then that energy that will automatically come in, you end up recycling that, because that will help improve your mindset. Your mindset now will help you to have consistency and discipline, to not self-sabotage. And then as you do that, more light and energy comes inside of you, then you start to awaken the spirit inside of you, because the spirit is basically dormant. Because if the body is the temple and the spirit dwells in it, and your body is overweight, not moving, not doing anything, the spirit is just going to be dormant. But the more energy you put in, you wake up the spirit, and then you start to become illuminated. You know, you is a process. You go step by step by step. So
that's right.
All of the things that I have said, you basically confirmed, but in a higher explanation, which is pretty awesome. So, okay, I've got, I had a dream. It was about 2 years ago. And this was, I can't remember how soon after it was, where I did Ufo Alvarius, which is another psychedelic medicine. And what you described, I had as a dream, but this dream was more than a dream, because I was in a gun battle, and I was basically, I don't know why I was at war with these people, but it was a shootout, and it was loud. I remember, and these were very, very high powerful weapons that they were using against me. I was behind concrete pillars, and I had to every few minutes go to one concrete pillar to the next, because the bullets were taking chunks out of it, and I was covered in dust. So anyway, I was able to escape, and then I met some people and we physically fought. And it was, I remember it so well that when I got up, my body was in pain. I didn't have any bruises, but I was physically sore. And this is when I started to realize that dreams actually put you in a different plane that is like a different reality. And I don't know if that would be astral traveling. I have no idea, but I know I was in a gunfight. I remember it vividly. I remember hearing the bullets passing by my ears, and the chunks of the concrete was coming out. I remember the physical hand-to-hand fights that I had. And I remember getting, and my body was physically aching. How would you describe that then? Is that I astral traveled, or was I connected into another dimension that when I came back, I brought, I guess you could say, the trauma, because the trauma in terms of the physical pain back to me? How would you explain that?
Yeah. So, you know, it's, I think one thing that we need to realize and recognize is that our concept of time has to really change. There does not exist linear time. And if you really understand that, then you understand that, first of all, because there is no linear time, time is actually rather a spherical model. Okay, so there are some main geometric and life force pathways that are very specific to this dimensional plane. The Fibonacci sequence helps us understand how infinite potential is organized in the form of matter in this dimension. And that's one thing it's kind of part of the basic understanding of how we can make sense of these, complex topics, really. But if we understand that time is actually a spherical model, meaning that all things are occurring simultaneously, there really is no past, there really is no future. The human actually accesses everything in this present moment. And everything in the present moment is really the only thing that's real, real from the concept of what is accessible to you, and where the human actually has the potential of accessing its free will. And that will equal creation, which is the whole point of the human incarnation, is to be pure creation. That is the meaning of the embodiment of love. Okay, so in this concept, when we are constantly moving, by the way, in and out of dimensions. The problem is that most of us, we're so disconnected and we're so unconscious. We're in hypnosis, really. We're just in a dream state, or we're sleeping. And what does that really mean? It means that you're completely disconnected from your physical body. You have no awareness of what your toes doing. You have no awareness of what your back's doing. You are just like right here. You're wearing the headset of the hologram, and you're just constantly responding and reacting to that. Meanwhile, you are surrounded by, in your body, which is interacting in your environment in ways that you're not aware of until you wake up, which is come fully into the present moment. So in the present moment, when you come into that awareness, what happens? People start to see synchronicities. People start to see ghosts, beings, entities, communications from nature, lights, this is where the human actually starts to begin to come into this harmonious experience where we start to see the magic, these magical things, right? The present moment is really a matter of frequency that brings the human into the 0 point. And the 0 point is the access point into all dimensional timelines that are available to the human. So when we go into dream state, it's easier for the physical, for this essence of ourselves to begin to navigate these dream states because we don't have the holding back and the redirection of the energy and attention into the physical realm. So every single night, every single human is interacting, traveling in these different states. And our dream state allows us to navigate past lives, future lives, and we begin to access these past life, future lives. Again, I'm using that to give us context because that's what we know it as. But because, and we have the ability of navigating that. So the key is for the human to become lucid, to become aware and conscious in these experiences. But the more conscious the human is, the more they practice lucidity in the waking state, which means that you're present, you're physical in your body, you are grounded in the present moment, and you're aware, and you are actually applying your free will to choose every moment. That's lucidity. So this bleeds into your dream state. And depending on how you are holding your frequency will define the kind of experiences that you're entering into in your dream state. So for example, for this experience that you're mentioning, you want to kind of get a sense of what was the primary emotion and the feel for that experience. Because a lot of people have a lot of interdimensional activities. And this is where we have events like the hybridization program, for example, or the 20 and back program. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where people, they are utilized for their psychic and physical abilities in the physical. In dream state, they're hijacked, supposedly parasitically, into these dimensional planes where they're utilized for wars on Mars or wars on moons or things like that. So those are, psyop kind of situations, but they are also utilizing the human subconscious mind to capitalize on that. And that those kinds of parasitic programs and agendas usually happen on people that are highly, cultivating their bodies, their awareness, their intuition. They have a developed intuition, and it's utilized sometimes by some of these darker programs, such as the government has been using remote viewers, for their own services. So, those people that cultivate those abilities are utilized a lot in these kinds of interdimensional programs. And there are intentions behind that. But I think the important takeaway from this is to understand that the more lucid you are in your waking state, the more lucid you're going to be in dream state. And you can begin to choose your involvement in these dreams-like scenarios. And I think it's important that humans do that because it's part of the discernment package of this physical body, I guess you can say.
Very interesting. And I tell you, what you said about the past, present, and the future existing at the same time, like I said, I did ayahuasca the weekend before last. I was shown, it was just like a mad thing I was shown. I saw the past, the present, and the future thoughts all living simultaneously. And I saw the creation of the thought in the energetic realm. And wow. This was, it was mad. So I saw, because I remember I felt hungry and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to eat an apple. So I saw the creation of the thought in the energetic field. Then I saw the actual in the present where I decided, okay, I'm going to get an apple. And then I saw in the future the thought and the fulfillment of me actually eating the apple all at the same time. It was next level. And I remember when I obviously came back from the travel, I was like, wow. So, I mean, people talk about it being like this, but I actually saw it. I actually saw how it was growing and creating, how the energy was forming and growing. And then it just led into the present, where then they took the action to get the apple. And then they saw me at the same time eating, and the chemicals in the brain and the thought process going on while I'm eating it, and the satiation and the fulfillment. It was wild. So I can attest that these things are actually how they say they are.
That's right. And what's beautiful about that experience is that it's very accurate. And if you really take that into the understanding that even your thoughts are creating before you even put them into action, you know, we would take more responsibility for what we're thinking instead of dozing off and coming into unconscious states. And what's interesting is that when I communicated with these beings, for example, they communicate and they exist in instant simultaneous dimensions. Okay, so think about that. There's no time for that creation. The good thing about existing in such a dense dimension, like you and I are existing in this 3D right now, is that we have that slow process where it manifests first in the energy and then it's anchored into the physical. In these higher dimensional planes, everything is instantaneous. So that's why, it requires the cultivation of that awareness, taking responsibility for your creation, understanding the accountability, the cause and effect of everything that you're thinking and feeling, because it is creating. And that's happening here too. But thankfully, it happens a little more slower. Which allows us to apply free will in that way, that we have time to really choose carefully and direct our creation.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the way I understand it is that we're having this test at the moment, because ultimately when we ascend into the fifth density, we will be able to read each other's thoughts, and we'll be able to manifest and create instantaneously. So if you're not of pure heart, you could see someone and you could just say, "Oh, I wish you were dead," and then that person would just die. So what you're saying about taking responsibility and accountability, it makes a lot of sense why the test that we have on Earth at the moment is so arduous, because you have great power that you will achieve, and great power comes with great responsibility. So if we are reckless and careless, it means that we will end up destroying ourselves ultimately through bad thoughts, because those thoughts will instantly manifest. And if they're not of a positive nature, it means then that we would just create more strife on the planet and stuff, right? So it's mad.
Yeah. And 5D is really not a destination. It's literally the embodiment and the awareness, because to be honest, we're moving through 5D, 4D, 3D, 2D, 1D, 12D all the time. At the same time. We're oscillating all the time. Yeah. So the interesting thing is that we're learning a lot as this nascent human race in order to understand what it means. And there are laws of the universe that we're learning. We're learning right now, basic laws of the universe, like the law of free will, the law of coherence, the fact that we are one, and the implementation of that, which is what we're learning as a human race, pulling us away from a self-serving kind of state of existing into a community conscious, this universal consciousness, which means that our choices now, in order to graduate to that next level of creation, to that instant manifestation where it's not causing necessarily suffering or pain or harm to another organism, your choices have to be made from what is good for me, like my highest good, not the ego or the self-serving part, but collectively what is good for me and what is good for the collective. And that completely changes the way that we make our choices. That's literally the way these advanced civilizations are functioning, actually.
Okay, so the experiences I spoke about was through psychedelics. Your experiences you talk about is through meditation. And even myself as a person has been meditating now for like 5 years. I still find that is very challenging to be able to stay in that state, because I have moments where I can absolutely feel it. And I always know when I'm in that state, because like for me, in my case, I feel like this energy coming through the top of my head. Everybody has like a different feeling, but I know, I feel this subtle thing coming through my head. I feel it percolating through my body, and it feels like I'm coming in and out. It just feels like, I guess you could call it like a lucid state, right? And I can feel this presence. And then it only lasts for maybe a couple of minutes, and then I lose focus. And you had been you talked about meditating for hours and hours and hours. So how do you have any tips or anything that we can use practically to be able to help us to stay in that state? Because even with my clients and I give them the meditations and stuff, they all say the same thing. And it's the same for me. My mind just wanders. And then it's so hard to come back. And sometimes 10 minutes have gone. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to come back. So how can we, is it a matter of quieting the mind or basically focusing on something? What are some of the tips you can give us to help improve the meditations? Because I do agree meditation is super powerful.
Yeah. So in the same way that we're learning how to build our muscle and learning how to be, these healthy organisms, ultimately we are conduits. We are bioelectrical organisms we are electrical, basically. And so that bioelectricity is cultivated in the body based on how much we are sustaining that conductivity. And conductivity in the body can be sustained by having good muscle mass, literally, and also at the same time growing gray matter in the brain. Okay, so gray matter is grown in the brain, and eventually it grows down the spine. Your entire spinal cord is a conduit organism, and it's a transmutational organ. Like this whole physical body is a transmutational organ that transmute lower frequency emotions into higher frequency emotions. In the complexity of an emotion is a thought form, a geometrical construct, and a muscle memory, a neural and nervous system memory that the body has to learn how to alchemize, okay? So when we're meditating, we are taking all of the unruly parts of us, addicted parts of us biochemically, because why it's so difficult to sit in meditation is because we are literally biochemically addicted to certain stimulations that keep us in a constant ADHD mode, right? And even worse, that literally has been programmed into our society through social engineering to depend on technologies and to be completely addicted to social immediate hits, dopamine hits, and all kinds of chemical hits that we are constantly addicted to. So we got to understand that we need to learn how to regulate the nervous system, okay? And in order to do that, we have to shift the perception of where we are directing our life force. Now, I'm going to show you the technique that helped me the most, but there's two parts to this understanding. First of all, your body, what you're perceiving in the world depends on which one of your chakras is most overactive at any given time, okay? So if your core belief system is that you're unsafe and that you need to be in a constant state of survival, chances are your root chakra is super wide open and overactive. Your sacral, your solar to some extent. But let's focus on the root right now. So what happens is that we have this concept called, seeing red. You know how they say he's seeing red when they're very angry. People are very angry. So each one of the chakras holds a feminine and masculine energy, and each one of those are combined with emotional constructs and the way that we hold this feminine masculine energy inside of our bodies. For a human to come into a peaceful state of harmony internally and with the external, these dualistic energies have to be integrated in all of the scale of frequencies that make up the whole meta consciousness of the human. Okay, so in this case, the root chakra, what the human can do is that it can learn how to contract and expand their chakra bodies, because chakras are spheres of our bodies that I was mentioning earlier. When we contract and we shrink down the root chakra, what we're doing is we're directing our energy from an imbalanced unconscious state to a conscious and aware intentional holding of our own energetic pattern. And so what we do is we redirect the attention from there and eventually pull it up the body. So we shrink the root chakra down to the size of a dime or a marble, whatever feels real to you. shrink the sacral down, the solar down. And what's going to happen is that you're going to all of a sudden feel really peaceful really quickly. You're not going to be, if you're in an enraged situation, enraged environment, you will immediately come down to a calm state. So this is how you begin to train yourself to regulate your emotional imbalanced perceptions. Okay. But there's more, because what has to happen then, and this technique, the opening and closing of the chakras, should be done in states of meditation only. You don't want to walk around with your chakras closed. You have to walk around with the chakras balanced, all of them open and on processing the world in a harmonious way. Okay, so most people, we have overactive and underactive, contracted chakras. Okay, so what we're doing in this training, in this practice, is that we are rebalancing the chakras with our energy and our intention. So what's going to happen after you close the first 3 chakras is that you expand the heart. You're going to open your heart. Your heart field, depending on how you utilize your heart energy, how you perceive your self-worth, how you perceive your connection with others and coherence with others, your heart will either be contracted, completely stagnant, or overactive. So we want to expand that just a larger amount than normal, so that we can begin to access higher bands of frequency in the body. The throat, to allow you to access harmony with those dualistic energies and your truth, so you can become aware of what your truth is. And your third eye, activating your intuition. So right now, as I mentioned earlier with the Merkaba conversation, we are making the Merkaba in the body. The Merkaba, how it comes into play, if you notice, is that inverted triangle begins to move upward, because we've closed the connection to the material realm and we've opened the connection to the spiritual realm. So the next is the crown. This is the most less talked about chakra, unfortunately, but it's actually the most important, because this is where non-physical meets the physical. And when this is dormant, the human can't create, and also is lost in their intention and their purpose. We have so many people that don't know their purpose. They're so confused and lost because this is dormant. So this 7th chakra is relating to the experience with your higher self, and the 8th is the relationship with your source. So as you begin to activate those in meditation, you have opened the channels, and you can experience this for yourself. For me, I'm a person that has to embody it and experience it first before even talking about it. So everything I talk to you of is based on what I have mastered in my own practice and what has helped me. So this was actually one of the most effective practices, because I was born and raised with ADHD, like major. I had to learn how to cultivate that in order to sit still for 9 hours, But what happens is that this also allows you to see yourself in as you really are, without the interference of these filters. Because when these lower chakras are wide open, it's very hard to even access your intuition. It's hard to even discern your emotions, and the ego plays with that. Obviously, it thrives off of these sensation bodies, and we get very stuck in that. The second part that I want to mention is practice techniques such as Vipassana meditation, which is the training of the observer. Okay. And it's very simple to find the observer. You can just in this moment, observe your hand. And I want you to feel the hand from the inside, feel the air around, feel the sensation of the wind, feel, the tingling of the fingers. Maybe there's heat, maybe there's, sensations of cool. And what I want you to do is I want you to find the one that's observing that hand, the one that's feeling the hand, the one that's sensing the hand, the one that's observing the hand. Your true self is the one that's observing all of those physical sensations. Okay. So if you simply, and what you'll notice is when you go to that one, there's, the body moves out of pain. It moves out of suffering. There's no more trauma. There's nothing. There's purely the presence of yourself with what you are in observation. And that is the emergence of pure consciousness. So to train in these 2 elements are the fastest way to train yourself to come into your truth and your 0 point as fast as possible.
So basically, you close the bottom 3 chakras. You basically come through the heart chakra, and then you observe, I guess, maybe it would be your thoughts, because you're in meditation. You observe the thoughts as the observer, or just a body part.
Yeah. So again, you close the first 3 chakras. You open the heart, the throat, and the third eye, and you activate the crown. Very important. Yeah.
Okay.
So you look like a martini glass energetically. Okay.
Okay.
And so what you're doing is you're coming into the observer. What are you observing? Everything. You're observing everything. And we need to get into the practice of being in a state of observation in as much stillness as possible, because that will allow you to regulate the nervous system and to begin to broaden your vision. Because when you're moving a lot, when you're it's energy that hasn't been accounted for. It has energy that hasn't been acknowledged. It's emotions that have been suppressed, resisted. Most of humans are existing in a state of resistance. So when you come into that, yeah, exactly. When we come into that state of observation, actually what you're doing is that you're allowing the opportunity to acknowledge everything you've been resisting. And for a lot of people, it's super uncomfortable at first. But once you bring yourself into reading state, that's why I offer the technique of the reading state, because it will allow you to quiet down all of that nonsense and noise that you have been feeding for years. It can be. You bring yourself into the 0 point immediately. And so as you train yourself to observe, you train your body, observe your body, observe your emotions. Don't get attached or identified with any one thing that you're experiencing, because what you'll notice is that observer, it's all and nothing simultaneously. And that's the training that the human has to go. We are not this body. We are not these emotions. We are not this environment around us. We are that infinite potential, that essence that is here. And when you begin to tune into that, that's when you begin to see truth, and no longer falling asleep in these constructs that we create for ourselves. We exist in these imaginary worlds more than we exist in reality, really. And by imagination, I mean any time that our life is a product of being in a constant attachment to the past or a constant attachment to the future, both of those are existing in fear and survival. When the human stops to be in the present moment, now you are entering a state of co-creation. And that's a completely different way of existing. And it's actually being, as they say, to actually be.
What you said reminded me of something that I had to do, because I call it my refinement period. And I had a very, very hard and arduous refinement period where I've shared my story a lot on my channel, but in synopsis, I had life-changing surgery on my foot. Everything that I thought was of value was taken away from me. My life, everything. I ended up changing countries. I ended up doing leaving a career that I really loved. And as at one of the highest points of my refinement period, and I was going through some really tough internal times, I had to sit down and observe how I was feeling, and not in myself, outside of myself. And I was like, okay, well, I'm still feeling these feelings, but I'm just going to observe them and see where they're coming from and try to understand. I said, okay, well, I'll feel them, but I'm not going to get attached to them, because basically if I get attached to them, it just make me feel worse. And that really much helped me. It was still difficult, but it helped me through it, because I spent many years on my own. So I had to find techniques and ways to help me to cope, because there wasn't really anyone that I could really talk to, really, because if you're going through something at 12 o'clock in the night, who you're going to call, right? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So, similar to how you talked about you found your own way to do meditation. I found ways to cope, right? So it very much is about the observer point of view to look at things that helps to get into the state. And I'm gonna try that, because the way you describe it as a martini glass created a perfect picture in my head. I'm gonna try that and see, because I'm kind of visual as well. So that makes so sense. Close all the chakras, open them all up, and bring it in. But like I said, I know when I'm connected, I feel it, and it's like this tingle at the top of my head, just tingling feeling. Then it just spreads in all of my body, and then I'm like there. And then all of a sudden, I would think, okay, what am I going to eat tomorrow? Or what am I going to cook today? And I'm like, what? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So I explained some really basic, actually fundamental parts of meditation. So anybody trying to get into meditation, use those techniques. But the second step is what you were just mentioning, which is once you've cultivated a bit of stillness, now what's going to happen is that all kinds of things are going to start coming up, right? So those strong emotions are going to start coming up. And actually how you work with that is by observing them, exactly as you were saying. And actually emotions have many layers to them. The layers that emotions have are kind of a story to how you programmed yourself to behave and to respond to those emotional states. So this is actually DNA reprogramming. That's exactly what it is. That's what I do with my clients is, we sit and we're absolutely present with the emotion. We observe it in the body and begin to notice the layers that begin to emerge. So let's say right now that there's a feeling of fear. Okay, so underneath is anger, resentment, insecurity. And then if you go to that root emotion of insecurity, you sit with that one and you begin to open it up, you're going to notice more layers of emotions. And essentially you reach the root, and the root is actually a core memory. Energetically, it's an energetic point that exists in your field. And of course, as a healer, energy worker, I work with people removing that, but everybody can do this. You can do this as well. You sense it in your field, in your body. And when you reach that core, you're going to notice that there are many memories tied to this belief, to this emotion. And it begins to open up memories of yourself throughout your life until you reach the root memory, which is usually in childhood. The healing and the integration of the child, the alchemization of that child self to broaden their perspective from the myopic view of trauma that was created in that moment into the perceptions of the father, the mother, all the people that played a role there. This is what causes us to expand into a unity consciousness, into a compassionate state of healing and wholeness. And we can it's not necessarily recuperating, but we wake up the conscious awareness of all of these unconscious states of us, and the field begins to expand energetically. Psychologically, we become integrated. Emotionally, we become balanced. Because all the emotions that we suppress and we resist are actually, that's trauma, and that keeps you actually reliving that trauma your entire life. And you'll know this because you'll notice that you're reliving that same dynamic with mom, with your partner. It's like you're existing in a loop. And that's the construct of the matrix. When you're unconscious and dormant, you're just sleeping and repeating. But when you stop repeating and you're conscious, now you can create. And that is the relationship with the unknown that we have to become friends with, which is what everyone is quite afraid of. But actually in being friends with the unknown, in diving into the unknown and trusting the self, this is where real self-love is. Self-love is the embodiment of profound trust, understanding that you are good. You are this infinite potential in any circumstance in the physical and interdimensional realms, because you're not just this body. And the human begins to remember that, we have self-healing abilities. Even in states of suffering, the human has the ability to alchemize, to transcend that. But our programming has limited that. And genetically, it's also affected us because, we are inheriting illnesses now. And then we even create the illness in our body, whether we actually need to have it or not. simply because it's the same. We create that environment in the body for these illnesses, right? So healing is really understanding what is the optimum state for the human to exist in, and beginning to alchemize some of these non-counter creative states. I mean, free will means you can experience anything, right? You can experience suffering all your life. That's okay. That's actually okay for you. You can choose to do that. But the human also has the potential to experience bliss states, ecstasy states of harmony. And this is actually the most constructive. It's the longevity, the healing, the balanced and harmonious geometry, and most alignment with nature.
So basically, like I say to my clients, I say, what you resist persists, you know?
Yeah.
And if you fail to make a change, then there will be no change, you know? And it's just as simple as that, right? So
Exactly.
I know that, and I can concur with what you're saying, because I can, on a personal level, like I have done loads of podcasts prior to having my own show. And I resisted having to do my own podcast because I didn't want the extra work, and I didn't want to have to be going finding guests and editing my own shows and what's not. And I resisted for 2.5 years. And I only literally started on June the 1st, this podcast. And I've got 32 episodes already. And it has completely changed my life. And I sometimes have to laugh and say to myself, I could have done this 2.5 years ago, but what I had to learn and pass through all the suffering that you described. And then now my life has completely changed. And the co-creative state that you describe is where I'm at now. And I sit down, I have to ask myself, is this like a dream? But I'm like, it probably is a dream all at the same time, right? So, you know, I find it kind of ironic where like, the same thing that I tell my clients is what I was going through. And then it just clicked, and I just decided, okay. And in my case, I was woken up out of my dream, out of my sleep. I was woken up about 3:00 in the morning. And the voice, as I always say to people, that's the only thing you can describe it as. It said to me 2 words: do podcasts. It was very loud. It was very powerful. And I was sleeping, and it got up physically, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Okay. And then I just started the whole process, and now I it's like, why wasn't I not doing it before? Because it gives me so much joy and freedom to do, and talking to cool people like you. So I can attest, people, that what you resist persists. And the unknown is something that we have to get comfortable with and stuff, And I think is, a lesson that we have to learn. And like you were saying, it seems to be in our DNA, which I think is quite interesting, because you had said that under hypnotherapy, you went back to Mesopotamia, and you can tell. So can you tell us a little bit about how humans were fashioned, what you saw, how they created this at the time and stuff like? Because I know of this from looking at the text, but it's very interesting that if you went back under hypnotherapy, what you saw, and if it is exactly how they say or how different it is,
Yeah. So just to let you know, for anybody interested, those hypnotherapies are public. So you guys can check them out on my website, actually, and listen to them. So in my hypnotherapy, I was taken back to Mesopotamia, and I was working with the Nephilim, who had been working to cultivate life force of humanity somehow. Okay, they had been collecting life force, and I was taken to several different scenarios. In one of these, I was taken to Petra, and in Petra, in those temples, caved into the beautiful mountains, there was this object that looked like a sun, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? It's like a sun. And as I approached the sun, what I realized is that it's made out of souls. It's all soul, pure life force energy and consciousness.
Wow.
And there was this Anunnaki, essentially, that was guarding this sun of souls. And I was one that was, I was working with them somehow, but through the many generations, the idea was to learn how to cultivate and refine the genetics of this human race, essentially. So I was shown that the human race was seeded by three main bloodlines, one being a Draco-reptilian bloodline from Alpha Draconis, another one being the Pleiadians, and a third being a red bloodline. And it was shown to me as being the Jewish bloodline, okay? And by that, it took me a long time to understand, what do you mean Jewish bloodline? But it was shown to me as the bloodline that masters all of the main elements of this planet, okay? But also at the same time, being a manifestation of the iron hosting blood that runs through the veins of the humans, which is purely created by the sun. It's a natural chemical creation based on the dimensional plane that we exist, the third being the third planet, being the third dimensional plane of experience. And because we are of the sun, because the sun is the main portal for which all souls populate this solar system, essentially, okay? Every single sun is a portal that interconnects us with other solar systems. And depending on what the sun is made out of in its chemical mineral composition will define the organisms. It's also going to define the geometrical structure at the monatomic level of the human. So we are literally, and that's where all of these concepts that have been written in the mysticism and all of these ancient mystery schools, everything from the Emerald Tablets to the Book of Gilgamesh, all these stories of the combining of the star people with the earth people, right? Now, these Anunnakis have been all around the world. They are depicted in every ancient civilization possible. And they are the missing link to understanding, where the human race is descending from, essentially, because as a genetic modification of these bloodlines, but not to say that it was necessarily orchestrated genetic modification. The way I see it is that it's an organic genetic modification of these bloodlines that seeded the human, that was a combination of these three main bloodlines. It was shown to me to be the Jewish bloodline because what it's referring to is the Christ consciousness, which we now understand the Judaic bloodline, the original Judaic consciousness that was brought in. And each one of these words has very deep, profound meanings. And that's really what we're referring to when I'm talking about these things. All of these words have very specific symbolism and, deep understanding. So the concept of Adam, or the concept of man, being the formulation of matter, and that man that we are, this human that we are, actually is braided within the DNA, all of the ancestral lineages that have created humanity. So the way I see it is that when Source decided to experience, the separation, let's say, right? Like the Book of Enoch, for example, right? He separates itself, Yaldabaoth breathes life in, then this entire creation is created, and every single human is experiencing this individual self. But in those layers is understanding the evolution of man. When we come from the separation, there are layers of that separation. And so in all of that, from this creation story, depending on the many layers of dimensions that are descending from that infinite source, from that wholeness down to the three-dimensional plane that we exist in, we hold within our DNA all of the different frequencies of beings that have existed. So there's a history of the Lyrans, the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, all of these names that we know. and that have been brought to our attention. And all of the ancient civilizations, they refer to these bloodlines. As you were mentioning, for example, the Hopi Indians that talk about, being seeded by the Pleiadians. In South America, we talk about the Venusians. There's a profound connection with the Venusians, with Orion. I mean, all around the world, there are the connection with the stars, primarily the Orion constellation, because this is where one of these bloodlines mainly came from. But I believe what is really being understood by this is that every single solar system sustains a certain vibrational frequency. Together, it's a range of frequencies from high to low. And it's kind of like a metaphor to explain the refraction mechanism that white light is expressing. Every single one of these species, I see it more of a frequency rather than just a definite, species, or define it as that. So the human race, as a combination of this Judaic bloodline, this Jewish bloodline, which is the earth, inner earth, they are inner earth organisms. They are made up of the physics, the laws of the earth. They are the ones that constructed the matrix. The matrix being a construct, a simple construct. And there are millions of constructs which we are moving in and out of in this planet Earth. We're kind of moving in it. So there's not just one matrix, there's many matrices, many dreams occurring simultaneously. Okay, so the human is kind of, and that's what we think of as past life, future lives, like, they're actually all occurring simultaneously, which is why we can navigate them through the the actual portals we're actually navigating through. So what happened in history is that after we came out of this concept of Mesopotamia, now, although I do believe in the origin from Mesopotamia, what I do see is that is just one of the cycles of incarnation of humanity. There are millions more.
Agreed.
And we're actually going to be discovering more of them in the next 10, 15 years, because more ruins are going to come up that are going to change the way that we perceive our human history. And we're going to date back millions and millions and millions more years. A good reference of that is, I have this book. I can't find it right now. I'll tell you the name later, but it's a fantastic book that talks about, the real anthropology of humanity. But we've existed millions of years more than we think in modern anthropology. So in any case, certain bloodlines were preserved. And there are two lineages, because this is a dualistic construct. There are two main bloodlines, original bloodlines, one being a fear-based, the contracted information, and the other one being the Christ consciousness. And I reserve saying that because I'm not talking about the religion. I'm talking about the highest manifestation of consciousness that the human has the potential of embodying. Okay, so when the human begins to become aware of that, which is the lineage of love, essentially, these two broke out, interconnected through human race, and some of them were more preserved through history. So this is where we start having the creation of religion. We start having the creation of state and politics, the entire Industrial Revolution, going down through the Vatican, and the preservation of Magdalene bloodlines, which is a whole nother story that we can't really get into right now yet. But from these bloodlines and the concept of the feminine and divine masculine energy, the human race was seeded. And a lot of these groups that decided to kind of go into more self-serving and control, because the more you allow this pure love consciousness to emerge on earth, the more creation there is, the more you cannot control the human race. It's all about pure creation. But what was done was that it was suppressed. And in a way, there was kind of a silent eugenics program that essentially limited certain bloodlines in history, or not limited, but tried to stall the growth and development of those bloodlines, as opposed to the natural evolution that is innate to all living organisms. Okay, because evolution is not something that we strive for. We are evolving. Whether you like it or not, we are evolving. We are moving from one dimensional frequency into another octave every single moment we're moving. So actually, the human that falls out of alignment with that natural cycle is actually stagnant. And that's where they start to experience suffering, right? So what happens is that a lot of these bloodlines and the manipulation of those bloodlines, in a sense, has stalled that development to create this, what we think of as the reincarnation cycle, this loop of unconsciousness. So a lot of these bloodlines had to come into a reincarnation where they kept coming in unconsciously. And however, once the human recognizes what's happening, they can begin to apply the free will in order to understand how to navigate that. Now, I used to think that we used to come from a planet that we are basically enslaved to. But what my understanding has evolved into now is a much larger perspective. And I invite you to look at it this way. We are actually, this planet Earth is an entire harmonic organism of creation. Okay, so everything is operating in harmony. And there is a balance and an innate self-organizing mechanism to this planet. So in reality, there's nothing that's really out of balance. The planet is actually experiencing exactly what it needs to experience at this time collectively in order to access highest octave evolution for all living organisms here. And I guess the invitation in that is that as soon as the human wakes up consciousness and begins to wake up from that unconscious repetition, they come into sovereignty, the control of their selves in all dimensions, and free will, where they can co-create and come back to that Christ consciousness, which essentially is the mastery over the matter. And timelines are created, new timelines are created and available for the human that is in that creative state. So we have many ranges of interdimensional cousins and relatives, essentially, but our bloodline is made up of all of the race, of everything in this universe. There is no such thing as a person only being one or a part, or, we are all of them. And the invitation for the human at this current time in evolution, because the veil is lifting and that we're going to have more ET contact than ever before on this planet, more awareness. Ayahuasca went great. Everyone's doing ayahuasca left and right every weekend, having these experiences. The purpose of that is that the veil has to be lifted because the humanity is entering into a maturing of an interdimensional human race. And for that reason, we have to integrate the fractals of ourselves that humans are experiencing in dream state. In dream state, we're navigating these timelines that are available to us. We're accessing our Pleiadian self, our Turian self, our warrior state, like in that war, for example. We're alchemizing all these states. The whole point is to become lucid and to understand the contractual agreement for experience, for integration. And essentially to come into harmony. Harmony simply means to come into natural alignment. I can't, in addition to that, I went really deep into the information. There's so much more that we can talk about, but I'll leave it there and let me know where you want to take that.
Okay, so I'm curious. So was it a situation where, because my research has shown me that it is a duality, and it looks like it is the Enki versus Enlil faction, where the Enki faction, except for Marduk, because he's just a psychopath, was trying to bringing consciousness into man, right? So basically Enki was the serpent in the Garden of Eden story because he gave humanity consciousness. This was also confirmed in the book of Jasher, where Adam was telling his son Seth that his mother Eve taught him consciousness, and she told him that the God in Eden was not the creator of the universe. So this is very clear in the symbology of the eagle and the serpent, where the eagle is the warring consciousness that you were talking about, and the serpent is the giver of consciousness. This is where you have the Nagas for the Hindus. You have on the headdress of for the Egyptian pharaohs that had the serpents. You have the plumed serpent, Quetzalcoatl. You have the serpent story in the Bible. Even the Nomo in not the Nomo, the Dogon. Sorry, they had serpent gods. So the serpent in antiquity was known as the giver of consciousness. So from my research, I can say is that Enki, Enlil, serpent versus eagle consciousness. So at some points of time, the Enlil faction used to help give consciousness, because there is a box called the Kef blocks, which was recently discovered, where Haldi, who basically is Enlil, at that time, he was giving consciousness to man. So this is, like you were saying, is rewriting history, where this was formed in Turkey and found in Turkey, and this is in cuneiform, which goes back further than even Mesopotamia. So we're talking at least prior to the first ice age. So we have Enlil, who was Haldi, giving consciousness to man. So he didn't start out being an absolute warlord tyrant. So there had to be something that happened, a switch where they just started to want to suppress and serve self. Did they get consumed by ego because we were worshiping them? Because humans have this predisposition to worship people that are greater than us. Even just look at celebrities at the moment, we almost worship them in a way. Where did you see where that switch occurred? And was there like a process that caused it for that separation? Because in the beginning, it didn't seem like they were basically trying to enslave us. They seemed to have been trying to help us, but something clearly happened even with the manipulation of a DNA, fusion of chromosome 2, capping our telomeres. You know what I mean? Do you know what happened, or were you shown?
Yeah, well, what I can share with you is this. The concept of beginning and end is something that we when we talk about these concepts, we kind of have to change, because again, time is spherical, okay? And so what that means is that we are sharing and existing in multiple timelines. In this timeline, the contractual agreement that all human has in this construct is to experience the alchemy, all of that you were talking about. Those are based on the alchemical symbols of transmutation of man. The serpent being the primordial life force, which is our sexual creative energy, transmuting through the spine into the pineal gland, which is the freedom, that bird that flies and goes into the higher dimensional planes. Okay, so we are learning how to become the conduits of of that primordial life force. And I think that a lot of that is also a symbolism of that, of what humanity actually is, and what we're here to share as an experience is this alchemical transmutation, and I think the more that the human learns the alchemy, which are these ancient arts that have been suppressed, in this construct, they are suppressed because we have to experience this contrast. As you mentioned, it is dualistic. This is the third dimensional plane. And in order to create, we're learning to master the feminine and the masculine, the good, the bad. We're learning how to integrate that in order to get the third, which is the child. We are the third, and we are continuously the third, over and over again. So I think in my humble opinion, I think that it's really the nature of this specific dimensional construct that we're sharing an experience together. And I think that we have the beautiful history, the hidden history that is there symbolically in many different things, to help us wake up consciousness and remember what we are as a human race. And the reason why I say that is because there are other timelines that I have visited, and that many, many contactees visiting all the time, experiencers, meditators, are experiencing many other constructs that exist in very higher octaves. So the human race, in other timelines, we have existed in more unity consciousness. In other timelines, we have existed in destructive, even more destructive timelines. So I think one of the invitations is that of non-attachment, non-identification, as much as possible to any one form of thinking. There really is no good or bad, no right or wrong. All there is an optimum, more longevity, vitality that the human can cultivate, or a counter-creative pathway to death. And the death is not really the death. It's just the recycling of your energy again. So this is kind of how I look at it. I hope that answers. I don't know if that answers the question.
It's very interesting. So, okay, so then as a collective, we are choosing this timeline basically to have this experience. So in this timeline, when the Anunnaki came here and they seeded us, in the beginning, it appears like it was more benevolent, but there was a switch. Did you see when that switch occurred and how it occurred?
Yeah. So again, I don't seem to see in the historic view that there is necessarily a switch. I feel that the intention of the beings, because we are descendants of a Draco-reptilian bloodline. We literally have a reptilian brain. I mean, our biology is designed to survive. That is very specific to a very specific collective timeline. Our basic biology is in alignment with a survival matrix. Okay, so I really feel that this entire human timeline was seeded for the pure experience of duality. You know, this is, and I know this is interesting. And here's why I also say that, because those same Anunnakis that were seeding life on our planet were also part of creating cloning programs through the military, which exists now. Okay. And it's still existing, and a lot of the abductions that humans are experiencing are through the military. Okay. And there's an entire hybridization program. We didn't even talk about that. The hybridization program, which is part of the human construct that is directed by the military. There are also other hybridization programs that are higher vibrational frequency that are made to sustain matrices. So the genetic information that we hold here on this planet is not just only part of this planet Earth. We share, and we are deeply interconnected with other planetary systems that we participated in seeding. Okay, so those timelines can be lesser, and I've seen them lesser, and they can also be higher, and I've seen them.
Wow.
So I don't know. That's kind of how I see that.
Wow, that's interesting, because basically this sounds very similar to what Dolores Cannon says. Dolores Cannon basically says that we chose our parents, we chose when to come back, we chose to have all these experiences for soul growth and what's not. And there's an interesting book, I can't remember exactly what it's called. I think it was called the Light Worker of Chiron or something like that, from memory. And basically this book blew my mind, because the book basically said that we chose every single experience that we wanted to have here because at a higher level, we knew, one, it's going to be difficult. Two, we would get massive soul growth from it. And three, we knew that we would forget everything. And that was part of the thrill, to be able to forget and to come back and learn. That book had me really uncomfortable. And even hearing Dolores Cannon, I'm kind of like, okay, because when I look back at my life now and what basically put me on the path that I'm on now, and even up to recently I was saying, but I mean, okay, things are good in my life now, but was it worth all of that pain? And I'm like, I'm torn between the answer to say yes or no, because in one point of view, I can be honest and say that it was through all the pain that I became what I am now. And I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, that pain was hard. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But I guess that's what caused me to wake up. So I'm kind of torn between like accepting if what the book is saying and what she's saying and then what you're saying. Is it really worth all of this pain, man? Like, do we have to really suffer like this?
Well, no, that's the thing. And I think, so I want to explain two things. Remember that in dream state, you're traveling in many dimensional planes, and when you die, you also leave the body. And I've had a near-death experience. I'm talking from actual having experienced that and going into these after realms, leaving the body and seeing what's there. When we have these afterlife experience, it's like a dream. It's exactly the same construct that we enter into that we're entering when we dream death. Okay. So, and all the ancient civilizations revered the study of death, revered the study of the afterlife, revered the study of dream state, and equated them as one. And the training, remember the Egyptians trained, leaving the body, learning how to come in and out of the body into astral states.
Yes.
So I think the reason why I also share this concept is that what I see in my work as a reflection of navigating and excavating, hundreds of people's subconscious mind, is that we seem to exist in more than one timeline, and we are constantly moving out in and out of it. And there's also profound connection between this timeline and other timelines. Our human experience isn't an individual experience. It's interconnected and interdependent. And when we experience healing and alchemy in another dimensional plane, we're also experiencing it here, and vice versa. The concept of being one transcends this physical state. The concept of being one transcends the illusion that it's only in this human experience. It literally is in all dimensional planes, and the human has access to all of those by leaving the body at any time, where you can bridge that gap of a concept that we're compartmentalized. This human experience is not compartmentalized. Everything is happening literally simultaneously. So, and I think what all of these ancient scriptures have guided us towards is the cultivation of the higher faculties, the practice of the alchemical practices, transmutational practices of your creative life force, for the purpose of having mastery and sovereignty of the navigation of these realms in your current life and then in the afterlife. Because how you die dictates the frequency and how you are traveling the next dimensional layer. So that being said, when I think of suffering and pain, it really is up to us to recover the memory. And that's why the highest form of ascension is how much you can remember who you are. What does that mean? You're not recovering your identity as the leader of the Pleiadians. You're recovering that you are all and nothing simultaneously. Therefore, the sooner you reach that deep integrative understanding, there is no suffering. There is no suffering. There is no judgment. There is no pain. There is no trauma. In fact, in this present moment, if you switch to the observer, you feel that very deeply in your body because you come into the present moment. It's kind of like the concept of the Matrix, the film, or one of those, I forget what video game, like Player One, or don't quote me. I can't remember the name, but the concept that wherever the human is most conscious, that's the game that they master. That's the realm in which they are mastering. So, higher level cultivation means you're aware in all of your dimensional layers. So I think that it's important to understand that, and it comes down to the basics. Suffering is a choice. And a lot of people really want to argue that. And trust me, I've not had an easy life. I've had a very difficult life. So I'm not just talking because I've had a great life. The alchemization of these in the present moment is the key to this realm. And this is why we talk. This is why you're doing what you're doing and what I'm doing to help people remember that. It is the activation of DNA. The sooner we enter into the 0 point, the more DNA we activate, more memory is recovered. This is the product of the research of the morphogenetic field. Memory is electrical. It's a bioelectrical field. When organisms are, removed, cut in half, these little organisms are cut in half, they stimulate one part of the body, the entire rest of the body starts to regenerate. This is a hologram. The memory that is inside my liver, if I donate to you, you're going to have my memories. You're going to have some of my feelings, my emotions, my thoughts, my tastes. It's a holographic system. So the more that we recover the memory of ourselves, the sooner the human detaches from the construct of the matrix into what they really are, which is this all and nothing. So that's what we have to, remember. I think that's the job, is to remember that simply.
What you said just now reminded me of what Krishna said to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. And he said to him that the cause of all human suffering is attachments.
Exactly.
And he said to Arjuna that when you are able to look at a piece of gold as just a normal lump of rock, he says that is when you will ultimately get your freedom from the material world. Because he says you need to be able to throw away that piece of gold like you do a normal rock. And it's one of the hardest things to do, because it took me a long time to really wrap my head around it, because I say it, but just like how I have on my shirt here.
Oh, yes. How beautiful. Yes.
Truth isn't learned. Truth is realized.
There you go.
And it is so true, because you can say things, but until you realize them, either you tasted it, you did it, you had the experience, you saw it, it doesn't really become realized until you actually have some sort of connection. And this is what ended up happening to me, where I still have challenges in my life, but I say now, well, I am greater than I think I am, and the power of the universe is inside of me. That's one of the things I always say to myself. Then the next thing I say is that I can overcome all challenges. And since I've realized it, because I used to say those things, but I had a aha moment when I realized it, and then it became true to me. And I just want to say, in part, that to everyone, that the journey is a long and arduous journey. And what I would say is that ultimately you must believe in yourself. And it may seem like if it's never going to end. It may seem like if you can't make it. And I've certainly had loads of moments like that. But what I would say is that once you stick with it and you commit to the action and not the result, eventually it will happen. It's almost like if, the universe says, okay, Todd, you want this thing? Well, you need to prove to me you want it. Let me see how consistent you are. It's just like I tell people, if you want to go into the gym, because I'm a physical trainer, you're not going to get in shape in one day, in 1 week, in 2 weeks. It could take 6 months. But as long as you commit to the action of doing it, eventually it will happen,
That's right. And I also want to say, yes, it's a lot of work, but actually there's a concept that I'm coming into more recently that I would love to share with you guys. And the cultivation of the 0 point is actually instantaneous. Actually, you are born into this dimensional plane with the understanding that you are everything. It's the programming that has blocked your memory of that. Okay, so you can access that awareness just right here, right now. The logical mind wants to make things difficult. It wants to attach. It wants to hold on. The ego wants to, hold on to suffering as an identity. But the more that you let go, that's why they say the more that you release it and you stop attaching to things, you already are. You already are right now. You actually don't even need to do anything. If you would just accept yourself as the concept of being all and nothing, as being absolutely perfect in this moment, it would save you a lot of time, and resistance. So I just want to leave you with that. Sometimes being present in the present moment is purely that embodiment. It doesn't really require that much work. And I think things are going to be speeding up also in that direction.
I will actually build on, just level up that, where we spend a lot of time complaining about how things should be instead of accepting how things are. And when we accept how things are, it means we don't have that discord about how things should be, because how things should be is what is the attachment. So when you accept how things are, you can find solutions, because all challenges have solutions. So I think that if everyone takes, into consideration that, I think that they will be able to speed up their process. So Geraldine, it has been absolutely awesome talking to you. I could talk to you for hours literally. And I would like to invite you back on the show again because we didn't even touch the hybridization. But I knew from listening to the interview with Jahan that we weren't even going to get there because the stuff about Mesopotamia, extraterrestrials, I just love to talk about these things. And I had a whole bunch of questions that I didn't even get to ask. And I was just writing down questions here just as you were talking. It was like, wow, okay, I need to understand that.
Awesome.
So
good. I'm excited. Can't wait to come back and talk to you again. Thank you.
Yes, so tell the people where they can find you, if they want to work with you, if you do they want to get hypnosis, all these kind of things. Where can the lovely people find you, reach out to you and work with you and stuff like that?
Yeah, thank you so much. If you guys want to do some deep shadow work, learn how to find that 0 point, you guys can schedule a DNA reprogramming with me at GeraldineOrozco.com. Links right here. And if you want to connect with hypnotherapy, same thing. Also, I have a YouTube channel, Geraldine Orozco. I have a lot of free videos there with this information that I dive deep into with PowerPoints, pictures, everything, and also meditations and guided work. So check me out. So happy to connect with you. And thank you again, Todd, for having me. It's such an honor. Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure to talk with you. And people, we talk about these things, but during the day, I help spiritually inclined people burn fat and build muscle. So if you want to get into the best shape of your life, improve your mindset, grow spiritually, and improve your consciousness, because my take is you go through the body, and as Geraldine confirmed, getting the body in shape will allow you to receive more light and increase your states and well-being. So if you want to get into the best shape of your life, you can send me a DM at my Instagram at Adriano_246 or my name Todd Cave. And as you can see from the shirt, this is the Conscious Man 7 shirt. Truth isn't learned, truth is realized. And if you want to help support this podcast, you can go to the Amazon store. Links will be in the description of this podcast, and grab your merch. If you get any of the merch, send me a message with the shirt on, and I will big you up and show you on one of the podcasts, and also tag you in my social media. And as you know, people, if you're now starting on a spiritual journey and you would like to overcome some fears and traumas, and you want to get yourself some magic mushrooms, hit me up as well on my socials, and I will help connect you with some magic mushrooms. And as usual, I just want to say thank you for listening to another episode of the Conscious Man 7. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. And stay tuned, because we have some even more amazing guests coming on. Geraldine will be back on, and we will go even deeper into some of the things that we didn't get to talk about. So again, Geraldine, many thanks for being a guest on the Conscious Man 7, and I can't wait to talk to you again. And I will speak to you all soon. Take care, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep being the change you want to see. Ciao and namaste.